I feel like with the team that we're about to talk about first, we should just scrap any team analysis and just talk about Patrick Beverly interviews at media camp, just talking about how Russell Westbrook's his best friend. But anyways, I'll
Yeah.
let you introduce the Lakers before I, ruin the whole segment by just talking about that.
Yeah. So the first team we're going to talk about is the Lakers. And this team is always just so much fun to talk about. Obviously, last year they didn't quite meet their expectations. They finished the 11th seed in the Western Conference, didn't even make the play-in tournament, and that was a big falling off. Anthony Davis got hurt, LeBron got hurt early on in the year. They were in the playoff picture, but as injuries started to mount up and team chemistry started to deteriorate, they really fell off, and there's a lot of negativity surrounding Lakers land. Everyone was really unhappy, and we'll see if things turn around much this summer. But with the coaching change, with Darvin Ham in as the new coach, he at least seems to be very positive on the outlook of this team.
And Darvin Ham is a guy that everyone can kind of root for. Like he's one of those, like he's like the hardest working coach in terms of we've just heard his name as a candidate for so long. Like any team that has a coaching vacancy, I feel like Darvin Ham is interviewed for. And you're like,
Yeah,
oh, I would like to see him coach a team someday, but it's always some higher profile guy. So for him to finally crack through in a really high profile position is on one hand really cool. On the other hand, like it's very volatile. It's a very kind of make or break beginning to his career because like Lakers fans are not always kind to their coaches.
yeah. I mean, he's a former player, so I think a lot of that will help him having that experience. Like he's dealt with the media before, he's dealt with fans before, and former players often do pretty well at like just connecting with the players on the team and getting guys to get on the same page and play for each other. And he's certainly had his work cut out for himself, having Westbrook accept a different role on this team and try to coexist with the other two stars. But everyone verbally, at least at the start of the year, seems like they're on board.
Yeah, and zero doubt about Darvin Ham's credentials. Like I think he's got to be one of the most qualified first time coaches. Like he's as qualified as you can possibly be. Yes, everyone is saying the right things. Russell Westbrook looked happy in media day. I've seen so many beautiful quotes about how he just wants to win and he'll play whatever role and do whatever the team wants. I wish I had the quotes in front of me, but I feel like he said something along the lines of it would be nicer if like to be wanted on a team, but he kind of made a plea to the everyday person where it's like we've all been in jobs where sometimes our managers are not necessarily very invested in our work. Like it felt like it felt quite actually in touch with I don't know, anyone who's ever been fired from their job or just like been close to getting fired from their job. I was just like, oh, Russ, um it's kind of sweet. And then all these Patrick Beverly interviews where like he just tells stories about how Russell Westbrook is his best friend, which is total news to everyone. Like where is this coming from? Where are these
And
stories about like Russell Westbrook buying front row tickets for Patrick Beverly's sister to like watch the game full court, and Patrick Beverly being like, that meant a lot to me, man. And he's just saying they're like best friend. He's Russell Westbrook is by far my best friend on the Lakers.
which really comes out of left field for anyone who's like paid attention to Patrick Beverly and Russell Westbrook give each other grief over the last few years. But I mean, we can hope they've turned a new page here in their relationship.
Yeah, Patrick Beverly is the WWE wrestler of the NBA. On the court, off the court, like he always brings the storylines. Like this is great drama. I will watch the Lakers. I will tune into more Lakers games if the storyline of the Russell Westbrook Patrick Beverly bromance is like if that stays solid. I'm here for it.
I really hope so. I mean, there's still the possibility that Russell Westbrook isn't on the team for too much longer if the Lakers can find a trade. He is their one major salary that they can unload and kind of take in some veterans with that magical 10 to 20 million a year salary range that makes people tradable. That there's not a whole lot of guys out there, but there are some, and I'm sure those teams will be willing to divulge some of their veterans in exchange for Lakers draft picks, especially 3 to 5 years down the line when Lakers may not be very good with LeBron's likely retirement at that point.
Yeah, we have, I mean, two things there. One is Rob Pelinka's quote at Media Day, where he made it very clear to all in attendance that he prioritized um, giving the Lakers in the what's left of the LeBron era the biggest chance to win a championship. He definitely spoke as though he was willing to go all in with those draft picks. So I suppose we'll see, because I'm sure people will be lining up to take those off his hands, though it could just be a matter of negotiating over what the protections are or whether they're protected. On the flip side, though, I feel when it comes to the Lakers and the media machine that swirls around them, being in LA, ESPN being very Lakers centric, as well as just like all national media outlets, like we're not hearing about a lot of trades sounding like they're particularly close. Like in the offseason, we heard about them plenty, Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, Bojan Bogdanovic and Mike Conley, or some sort of Jazz package, which is probably off the table now with Bojan being sent out to Detroit. But I'm a little if you're a Lakers fan hoping for this Russ trade, you have to be a little concerned, right?
I would kind of look to this, maybe the Spurs as my main hope there, just because the Spurs expressed interest in taking the Westbrook salary and opening up a roster spot for the Lakers earlier this summer. I mean, it would take some draft capital to do it, but the
I
Spurs
mean,
have a couple veterans.
Greg Popovich would love to hurt the Lakers as much as possible, I think. But sorry, go on.
That is true. Yeah. I mean, the Spurs do have some veteran players that they're probably not super interested in playing heavy minutes for them this year, because they're interested in, let's just call it like it is, getting a good draft pick this year. So that's one option. Pacers, no one really knows. They have an owner, Herb Simon, who's very aged and has never really been willing to go into the tank before. He always wants to field a competitive team for as long as he can, or semi-competitive in their case. So we'll see, but I think it would take kind of a philosophical shift for the Pacers to be willing to tear down that we just haven't seen from them yet. And I'll believe when I see it, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Miles Turner is still there, but they got rid of Brogdon. They sent out Sabonis last year. They're almost all the
Yeah,
way
they
there.
did.
Now you can see them pivoting into Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner sort of working together. But I guess we'll save that for Pacers talk. In terms of, regardless of trade rumors, what do you like or dislike about this Lakers roster?
So what I like about it is probably what Russell Westbrook's attitude is the main thing. Like I think the saving grace for this team is Russell Westbrook being willing to buy in, play defense, play off ball. And he was a decent corner shooter. I believe he was in the high 30s last season, even though it was on very low volume. So he obviously didn't do a lot of it, but it's something that he's capable of. And throughout his career, he's never been an awful catch and shoot player. I think the pull up threes are really what get him into trouble. But he's always been a player who, you can at least respect on a catch and shoot three if he's relatively open. So I think Russ being willing, maybe it's the friendship with Patrick Beverly. Maybe it was just kind of the overall humiliation of last year, and maybe some self-reflection took place this summer. But if he's willing to buy in, I do like that about the Lakers' chances this upcoming season. I think that would make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not humbled by last season, then you're just unhumbleable. And like I've never been a big Russ guy, but it's hard not to root for him just a little bit right now. Like he's kind of hit rock bottom as a player, in the worst market to hit rock bottom, where just like there's so much obsession. Like some players fade and they do it quietly. When you're doing
Yeah.
it in LA, when you're counted on as a big piece, it's just like it's nonstop. I'd see the interviews and I'd feel for him, like just like it must be like none of us have ever faced that kind of like intense scrutiny day after day. None of us have been paid $40 million a year, so I get why some people might be less sympathetic. But I feel for you, Russ. I hope you have a big year. There's plenty to dislike about this roster. They're
Well,
still,
if we want to talk about stuff we dislike, I think we
yeah.
should
Sure. You
bring
want to
up.
say positive or you want to get real?
Let's just briefly touch on Darvin Ham's initial starting lineup that they're rolling out in training camp.
Yeah.
So they've decided to put the three feature players out on the floor together: LeBron, AD, and Russell Westbrook. And the two guys they've decided are best surrounding that trio are Kendrick Nunn and Damian Jones.
Yeah. I didn't
So
hate hearing that.
I wanted to ask how you felt about that lineup. I mean, defensively, I could see how starting Damian Jones could have some merits. However, I just really question the spacing, especially at LeBron's kind of advanced stage where he's driving to the rim less and spotting up for three or taking off the dribble threes more than he used to.
Yeah. I mean, they've had AD and LeBron combo have had a lot of success with a rim diving big next to AD and LeBron. It doesn't sound like intuitively what you would want to do with that duo, but it has worked out for them. So it's not like,
Yeah, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Damian Jones is kind of nice to like, not that he's like a crazy young player. I think he's like 26 or 27, but
Yeah, mid late 20s. Yeah.
um, it's nice to see him get an opportunity. He was very enjoyable to watch in Sacramento, like a hard rim rolling, high effort. I haven't, watched quite enough to say that his defense is to really assess the quality of his defense, I suppose. But like he's got a reputation as a defensive guy. I like him going defensive in the starting lineup. I thought that was always an innovative approach by Vogel back when they won the championship. And then Kendrick Nunn, I'm not a huge fan, but in the regular season, at least, he shot it well enough to be that guard. Patrick Beverley is probably a little bit of a better shooter. But if I don't know if Kendrick Nunn's out playing him in training camp, then we haven't seen him in a couple of years, so we really don't know what he looks like. But he kind of bust out on the scene as a rookie in Miami, and then like an older rookie in Miami, and kind of improved his shooting numbers a little bit in that second year, and we haven't really seen him since. It's not the. It's like if I was gonna, I probably would have liked to see maybe Austin Reeves for the shooting in there.
Yeah.
Or Patrick Beverley if they're going to put another guard next to Russell Westbrook, like another smaller guard. But I like the Damian Jones. I guess that means you're bringing Thomas Bryant off the bench. I know a lot of Lakers fans were excited about Thomas Bryant because he's a really good shooter and he's got amazing touch inside the line.
Well, I think they're going to need some form of offense off the bench. Like, hopefully, they'll be staggering LeBron and Russell Westbrook's minutes, so they don't play a whole lot together and they spend a decent amount of time apart. And Russell Westbrook loves having big men that can pick and pop. So Thomas Bryant certainly has the potential to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's
and
an
then
interesting pairing.
Off the bench, they just have a lot of guys who are just kind of decent wings, surrounding supporting players. They have Juan Toscano Anderson, Lonnie Walker, Pat Bev, Troy Brown. None of those guys really like leap off the page to me, but if one or two of them can, I mean, the Lakers really just need average players at this point. If the thing that's going to make them special is if LeBron and AD are great this year, and if Russell Westbrook settles into a role that is better for his skill set. And they just need guys who are just okay NBA players surrounding that, and that they really have not had that. Last year they didn't. They had a lot of veterans who really struggled on one or both ends of the floor. So yeah, they just need guys who can hold up.
Yeah, biggest thing on this team, regardless of Russell Westbrook, like AD and LeBron staying healthy is going to absolutely be the make or break feature of the Lakers season. Around that, I do think it's important to take stock of all these other players on the team who are going to be playing important roles. And all they need is a couple of them to find like their place on this roster and be able to move forward. Last year just felt like nothing worked. Like they were, people like
Yeah.
Lakers fans had to subsist on being like, Carmelo Anthony is looking actually pretty solid coming off the bench, and Malik Monk hits some shots. Like, yeah, you got one role player in your team hitting shots, and you got to break out the champagne for him every day. So I think a lot of these guys that you mentioned, from Thomas Bryant, Damian Jones to like Lonnie Walker, yeah, all the like a whole bunch of guys who could very much kind of break out and carve out themselves a major role on this team, or we have
Mhm.
another year of the same. I think what's nice about this Lakers team is at least they're going into the season with lower expectations. Like last year,
Oh, for sure.
we knew it was going to fit bad, but we were like, it's LeBron, it's big names. They're gonna figure it out. This year, I think, you know, cool heads don't even expect them to necessarily make the playoffs. They're kind of in that play-in
No.
category. So at least like, you know, they're in a position where they could surprise us if they can figure out a couple of really workable lineups with this motley crew of yellow and purple.
Yeah, and Vegas has them number 11 in title odds, which is crazy because Vegas tends
Yeah.
to lean pretty hard towards the star power teams, even if the overall roster fit doesn't look great or if there's other questions.
But even that
But
sounds like really high, like
yeah,
11th in the entire league, like for the
I mean
like
they're getting a little bit of a LeBron and AD bump, obviously, but
totally
still, like Vegas
and a
still
huge
does
betting
not see
market.
this team in the top 10,
Yeah.
which I think really speaks volumes. So my big
Yeah.
question for the Lakers is I would just wanted to ask you, I think this team, you can look at it and it really isn't clear how the roster is going to fit. So I'm going to ask you, do you think the Lakers are going to struggle defensively this year or offensively, or is there just going to be a mess all around? Or what do you see this team's biggest roadblock in terms of, what side of the floor this season?
I think the offense is going to be a much bigger problem. I think even LeBron in his old age is a crafty, useful defensive piece. Anthony Davis, if he's healthy, is a monstrous defensive piece. Like really, just like one of the NBA's cheat codes in terms of a guy who can,
Yeah.
switch four positions, um, as well as like protect the rim. He's a monster defensively. So I think that's a really good place to start with LeBron as a complementary player. I think they've got just enough defensive role players that if they're committed, I can see how you would as a coach approach that and cobble together a really good defense. I think the lack of shooting and their inability to put defenders and offensive players on the floor at the same time is going to be awkward for them. Last year they
Yeah.
tried to tilt towards offense, and it was just kind of a joke. They played sort of sideshow ball a year with LeBron like being a stretch five sort of thing, but they had to do that a little bit by necessity. So I'd like to see them buckle down on defense and let the offense kind of figure itself out, even if it kind of comes in spurts and gags at the beginning.
Yeah, and I definitely see the offensive struggles likely being there. I will say, with the caveat that if LeBron and AD are both awesome, and LeBron still has enough spring in his step to blow by defenders one on one on occasion, or even just AD pick and rolls, if that just becomes a bucket every
Yeah.
single time they run it, I that's gonna really do a lot for the offense. The question is just, is that going to be something they can rely on to manufacture a top 15 offense for most of the season, or are LeBron and AD going to miss time with nagging injuries? Because I think if either one of them are out for any extended period of time, things could crater pretty quickly.
Yeah, they need to play 60 games each. They need to combine for 120 games essentially for the Lakers to
Yeah.
be a real team this year. My question for you is just outside of the big stars, if you had to buy stock in one of these Lakers, who would it be?
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of the hype surrounding Kendrick Nunn out of Lakers training camp. And I am not going to buy it personally. I'm not a big fan of small guards that struggle defensively in the playoffs, even if he's okay offensively in the regular season, even if he gives them a jolt in the regular season, just a useful player that helps them make the playoffs. I still question how long that's going to last. So in that case, they don't necessarily have a whole ton of exciting offseason additions this year. Dennis Schroeder, Lonnie Walker are a few guys that we can mention, Damian Jones. And out of those guys, I am going to go with Lonnie Walker as the guy that I'll put at least some semblance of faith into. I understand the flaws with Lonnie Walker, like the jump shot is shaky. His confidence overall is shaky. He's kind of had some ups and downs. I know Pop, when he was on the Spurs, used to just kind of bench him for stretches of games, and he just
Yeah.
wouldn't play, and then he'd come back. But he's at least a guy who is a really bouncy athlete. He's going to be a plus athlete even compared to many NBA guards. And there's always upside with those guys. So even if the jump shot isn't there, I like guys who can attack a defense and cause the defense to collapse and people to panic and rotations to potentially get messed up, because those guys can make good things happen for your team.
If you tuned into just like a handful of Spurs games last year and they were the right Spurs games, you'd come away with it being like, Lonnie Walker.
Yeah.
He's special. He's got something. He does pop on the screen. He just like has that, like, she's got a shiftiness. He's got an explosiveness. And then if you're a diehard Spurs fan and you're watching every game, you have quite a different experience on Lonnie Walker. But a player like that, it's like a little thing goes right, like just a strong shooting season, for example, and all of a sudden he's a completely different player.
Yeah.
I was tempted to go Pat Bev, after he helped resuscitate the Minnesota Timberwolves last year, good vibes in Pat Bev town. But two players I think are sort of interesting are Austin Reeves. He had he had some big moments and flashed a lot of toughness and basketball IQ last year. And I think Troy Brown Jr. has the potential to be like a wing that unlocks two-way lineups for the Lakers. He hasn't like popped yet in his career, but he's still a pretty young guy. And I think why not? Let's put it together in Laker Town.
He's one of those theoretical 3-and-D guys. I don't know if the shooting or the defense is more theoretical. They probably both are at this point, but
yeah.
I mean, he's a guy who's in the low 30s from three for his career, and if he can just get a little bit better and become a guy that defenses have to respect, that makes a world of difference.
Yeah, in today's NBA, you never know who's gonna like come out of nowhere to shoot 40% over a season. So going to take a random flyer on Troy Brown Jr. You got this, Troy.
Well, that's kind of what I'm doing with Lonnie Walker as well. I mean, there's so many worlds in which Lonnie Walker is not good this year, and I fully admit that.
I just think that's the whole Lakers roster. So we just gotta shoot our shot and hope it goes in, just like they'll be doing all year.